From time to time, I find myself being drawn again to the simpler, more direct, more raw action that I associate with Dark Age and early medieval battles. I don't know what game I might look at or return to satisfy this latest interest. But for now, I've taken off the shelf this book, Might of Arms, Rules for Ancient, Dark Age, and Medieval Miniatures Battles by Bob Bryant, published by Colonnade Publishing. So we have a fully bound book of about 108 pages. 108 pages, and a single two-sided cardstock. Yeah, cardstock play aid. So the play aid, pretty dense actually, pretty dense. So we have, just to give an initial taste of this rule set, we've got a turn sequence made up of about a little more than a dozen steps. We have charge restriction section, charge and charge response checks. We have movement distances by troop type, basic move and charge, a good dozen troop types from light cavalry to leader on foot and mounted leader. We have types of moves. So basic move, charge move, forward, reverse facing, fallback, break off from melee, skirmish move, double, evade, effect of rough terrain on movement, shaken, morale check, morale bases. We have A11, B10, C9, D8, E7, so morale checks are passed on 2d6, less than or equal to base, plus and minus modifiers to base, so all straightforward, pretty straightforward so far. Causes for checking morale. Charge, countercharge, receive charge, halted, evade, shooting, melee, formed foot, melee other troops, and okay, morale modifiers, about 8 morale modifiers. So that's all the first side of the Might of Arms play aid. Back we have D6 shooting factors. Okay, missile weapon. It's probably the target up here. Okay, shooting modifier, shooting ranges in inches. Troop type melee factors, attacking troops. Okay. So these factors are ranging from 1 to 8. Yeah, 1 to 8. Melee modifiers, melee morale check, precedence, and then hit table. So the hit table has sum of melee factor plus modifiers plus a d6, columns for 0 to 20, stands 1 to 8, and then it has what must be hits. But it goes all the way up to 86. Attached leader, fatigue, and becoming worn. Okay, and that's all the two-sided play aid. All pretty straightforward. As heavy on morale as it is on unit types and so forth. So go to the rule book. So, contents, game scales and equipment, the troops, bases and points, the battleground, setting up a battle, the turn sequence, maneuver, charge and charge response, morale, shooting, melee, victory, optional rules. So optional rules, extension of rules to, 1540, restricted command for leader in melee, approach check, leader ability, leader steadiness, restriction of break off, flank and rear attacks against mounted troops, rapid formation changes, reduction of penalties for formation changes, reduction of penalty for flank or rear charges, 180-degree turn, break off for light infantry, suspension of morale penalty for unsupported formed infantry, shooting into melee by skirmish infantry, charge initiative for light cavalry, Swiss pike formations, assaulting fortified areas, standards and religious inspiration, restricted double move, enhancements of fierce, casualties for campaign games. So right there it looks like, it's only about five pages of optional rules, and a list of figures. That's nice. All right, introduction. Might of Arms is a set of rules for set-piece battles using miniature figures for armies from the Stone Age through the 15th century AD. The game focuses on the battle roles of heavy infantry, heavy cavalry, mounted skirmishers, and foot skirmishers. The game is about the decisive events in a large battle rather than about the details of weapons, formations, and small unit actions. The overall objective of the game is to produce a believable outcome for a large battle. The rules for morale, shooting, and melee are simple and easy to learn. Rules governing movement and charging into contact with the enemy are more detailed. MOA is a fast-paced, clean game with minimal ambiguity of rules interpretation, while at the same time providing a depth and breadth of tactics that will require several games to explore. The game is particularly well suited for several players on a side. The game is broad in scope. The game is simple enough that players who want to add additional rules to reflect their ideas about warfare for a particular period can do so without disrupting the way the various rules work together. Above all else, MOA is supposed to be fun. Descriptions of 150 armies in the form of lists of troops characteristic for each army are included. Okay. All straightforward, pretty traditional. Game scales and equipment. So as we look at Might of Arms, what might we need to play? What might we need to play Might of Arms if we are not dedicated miniaturists? If we don't already have, and if we haven't already enjoyed all the labor involved in preparing and painting and so forth, entire armies in miniature, and what makes this distinct from other rule sets, and how are the very basic and core mechanics handled? How is combat handled? How is morale handled? So very similar to many miniatures rule sets, we have the troop types and then descriptions. So for example, cataphract cavalry, abbreviation CAT-CAV, and you get a paragraph or short paragraph description: cavalry with rider fully armored and horse armored all around. Shields are rarely used. This type of cavalry maneuvers and fights hand-to-hand in a close formation, also known as klebanophoroi. I did not know that. This right away gives you an idea of the design approach, where the designer has obviously keyed in on general troop types defined not just by equipment carried, but role on the battlefield. So elite cavalry as a type is interesting. Heavy cavalry, medium cavalry. Oh, wow. We have a lot of types. Okay. Formed cavalry, or formed camelry. Cataphract camelry. Okay. Heavy camelry, medium camelry. Okay. A little more detail than I guess, typical. Formed chariots and elephants. Formed infantry. Wow. Okay, just in formed infantry, we've got heavy knight infantry, medium knight infantry, heavy infantry, sub-heavy infantry, okay. Medium infantry, light infantry, elite heavy, and then elite heavy infantry, elite sub-heavy infantry, elite medium infantry, elite light infantry. Okay, sub-heavy infantry, that's not typical. Same as heavy infantry, except slightly less effective in hand-to-hand combat. Typically, sub-heavy infantry lack armor and either lack shields or lack formal drill. So that's getting into some, while still using general troop types that I guess makes it easy to handle so many centuries of warfare. Still pretty detailed troop types, taking into account training, infantry, equipment, battlefield role, organization, okay, artillery, and skirmishers. So not just skirmishers, we got skirmish infantry, light cavalry, and light camelry. So that's interesting. Light camelry is a troop type under skirmishers, separate from the first three. Formed camelry. Formed camelry versus basically skirmish camelry. Okay, skirmishers, dismounted troops. Some nice rule sections on just skirmishers and dismounted troops. Missile weapons, mounted infantry. Okay, so like mounted infantry has its own section, couple of short paragraphs, and then penalties for mounted infantry. So counts as medium cavalry or camelry while mounted, cannot shoot, counts the shaken modifier when checking morale and in melee, but the unit is not shaken unless it becomes shaken through the usual causes, cannot count the melee charge modifier. Mounted infantry. Okay. Mounted infantry are treated as medium cavalry or medium camelry. Skirmish infantry may not be mounted. There are penalties for mounted infantry in combat and when checking morale. Interesting. Melee weapons, missile weapons. So it looks like missile weapons permitted by troop type. So like light infantry, any. Other formed infantry, any missile weapon except javelin or staff sling. Mixed missile and melee weapons. Morale classes. Okay, so the morale classes, A, B, C, D, E. And again, descriptions. Okay. From guards, troops of the highest caliber down to levy, unreliable, no training experience nor commitment. Command structure. So the armies are organized into groups with each group under a group leader. Leaders, standards, religious inspiration, hints on effective organization. So why would there be a section on hints on effective organization? Unit sizes of 3 stands for light troops, 6 for formed infantry, and 3 for formed cavalry are recommended. Using 2 stand and 4 stand units provides the same game and saves on the expense of figures and table space. Okay. In general, in a multiplayer, okay. Okay. Choosing troop types. Design note on orders. Orders are not used in MOA because they are unnecessary. Playing the game without orders results in movement, combat, and an outcome that looks like a battle as it would be described by an ancient historian, which is a design objective. So if you're at all interested, I think if you're at all interested in full battles, the option to play, many different historical periods over a large time span, and especially if you're interested in creating kind of a narrative that in the game, a narrative that sounds like one or more of your favorite ancient historians, MOA is a rule set for you. Bases and points. Okay, a lot of point costs. A whole page of point costs. The battleground, types of rough terrain. Oh, nice. Full page, high quality line drawings. That's nice. Showing nice, schematic diagram style images of the bases and units. It's nice. Setting up a battle, a 6-step process, placing terrain. Okay, so 3 pages on setting up a battle, with quite a bit of text actually. Yep, that's definitely quite a bit just on setting up a battle. The turn sequence. So let's look at the turn sequence. Yeah. So action, determine initiative. Okay, first side moves, first side shoots. Second side moves and shoots. Delayed shooting for first side. Why would you delay shooting? Any unit on the first side that did not already shoot this turn may shoot. Okay. Shooting may be deliberately delayed. Okay. So choosing for basically a second shooting opportunity after the opposing side moves and shoots. Targets check morale if required. Okay. Declare charges and check morale. Okay. Declare charge responses and check morale. Evade, countercharge, and charge moves. Melee. Conduct melee simultaneously for all units in contact. Check morale for seeing leader hit in melee. Check melee morale. Check morale for seeing routes from melee. So this is a game where you have to pay attention to, and you will be paying attention to, basically what units see presumably within some type of radius, right? There are benefits to this, and this can, I'm only guessing that can get a little fiddly, but I should say that's only my impression. I need to actually play a game that uses this concept. So what does this mean? Any unit that is within 8 inches of a friendly unit that routed in melee and has a line of sight to the routed unit checks morale. There are exceptions. The most common exception is to ignore routing friendly skirmishers. Okay, remove routed units. Break off from melee. Recover from being shaken. So fairly involved turn sequence. Certainly not your basic, move, shoot, melee, rally. Okay, maneuver. So now we have the chapter on maneuver. Formations. Formation changes. Now we have again 3/4 of a page, again with detailed line drawings. Showing the different examples of formation changes. So for example, it's okay, this example, a unit changes front into a column one stand wide. So it went from having 6 stands, 3 wide, 2 deep, to all 6 stands, one behind the other, in column. Maneuver, movement, forward move the wheel. Okay. More useful diagrams. Double move, skirmish move. Okay, all the particular moves. Unit passing through each other, moving in rough terrain. Moving, okay. Movement distances, okay. Not, that is basically the same table that was on the player aid. Okay, maneuver, movement, and break off. Eligible troop types. Okay, so we're getting into the detail of reverse facing. Eligible troop types broken down into these 2 broad categories, which corresponds to shaken if contacted by enemy charge, yes and no. So no for skirmish infantry, light infantry, elite infantry, so forth. Okay. Eligible to shoot, yes. Okay. Definitely something you'll be referencing during play, at least until you memorize the common, cases, I guess. Charge and charge response. Charge declaration, charge restrictions. So it looks like, let's just look at this chapter now. We're in charge and charge response, charge declaration, and you get two paragraphs and a table. This kind of leads me to believe that, as the introduction suggested, that they really do explain a lot. And so a lot is not left for filling in by players, I guess. That's my impression. So for example, again, charge declaration section of charge and charge response chapter. If an enemy unit is not named in the charge declaration, then it cannot be contacted by the charging unit, except in the following case. If an enemy unit is uncovered by skirmish infantry that evade through it, the fresh enemy in the path of the charge may be contacted. The charging unit does not check morale. The fresh enemy unit checks morale as though a charge declaration was made on it. Okay, so this does give me the impression that a lot of specific circumstances are addressed. That's my impression, which is nice, very nice. Charge restrictions, a whole table of charge restrictions. A whole nother page of diagrams. This does seem to be, maybe if one were starting with a first rule set for this time period, seems like this might actually be a good rule set to begin with, because it has so many clear diagrams, lots of tables, lots of tables, lots of explanations. So maybe it is a good rule set to begin with for someone starting out in kind of a traditional miniatures rule set for ancient Dark Ages and medieval. More diagrams, more tables. Wow. Wow. Evasion. And again, evasion is several paragraphs, and a table. Wow, it's pretty nice. Yeah, elephant route move, movement in melee. It does seem like this might be a really, I guess, clearly laid out rule set. Good for, again, good for beginners. The morale chapter. Yep. Wow. Examples of checking morale for charge or charge response. More diagrams. Very nice shooting. Okay. So basically, how is shooting done? Shooting range, line of sight, shooting hits. There's examples, several examples, a whole page of examples. Cover, indirect shooting. Now for a first look over, these really do look, this does look like a good rule set. Lots of examples. Shooting zones, stands eligible to shoot. Okay, back to the D6 shooting factors. What does that mean? Example of shooting resolution. Okay, 4 stands of Unit A. Four stands of Unit A shoot at X. Okay, so it must be these 4 are shooting at X. The factor for shooting at heavy infantry is 3. Roll 4 dice and look for 1s, 2s, and 3s. 2 stands of A shoot at Y, and the 3 stands in B shoot at Y. The factor for both bow and javelin, so bow and javelin, is 2. Roll 5 dice and score hits on 1s and 2s. It's okay to roll separately for units A and B shooting at Y. Okay. So the factors look like the 2 hit numbers. Yeah, the shooting factors on that table shows D6 die rolls needed for a particular missile weapon to hit the various troop types listed in the columns. Okay, these columns, yeah. A hit is scored if the die roll is equal to or less than the number shown in the table. Okay. Roll together. Okay. Melee. There's the hit table again. Explanation of melee modifiers. Wow. Example of calculating melee hits for multiple enemies. So assuming that's a whole half page. So it's a whole half page example of melee hits for multiple enemy units with diagram in addition. So assuming that all of these examples and all of these diagrams are actually accurate, this is a lot of examples and diagrams to help you get these rules. And I'm gonna assume, well, given the introduction, these concepts shouldn't be that unusual or complicated, which would be yet another reason why this would be a good beginning rule set for someone who wants a classic, straightforward miniatures rule set to cover these periods. So victory, troop point losses. Okay, so these are all the optional rules we looked at. Leader abilities. These are as interesting as they sound. So, leader steadiness. So it looks like, yeah, accounting for rash leaders, inept, reliable, rash characteristics, cautious characteristics for leaders. Interesting. Yeah. Okay. And then army lists. Yeah. So we're up to page 62. All of the rules cover, including optional rules, cover all of that up to page 62 or before page 62, and from 62 on, we're going to get into all these army lists with good examples and introduction to the whole chapter on army lists. So the armies listed, and we are talking, as you would expect in a rule set like this, just to start at the very beginning. With time spans as well. Early Libyan, Hittite, New Kingdom, Egyptian, early Arab, Homeric, Greek, early Assyrian, Sea Peoples, etc. All the way up to early Irish, early Scots, Picts, Ostrogothic, Middle Chinese, Sassanid, Persian, early Frankish, Saxon, so forth. All the characters you would expect: the Magyars, the Vikings, the Anglo-Danish, the Ghaznavid, the Fatimid, Egyptian, Berber, etc. All the way up to the last one, late Ottoman Turk, Islamic Persian, French Ordonnance, Renaissance Italian states, etc. Examples of orders of battle. Those are always nice. Okay, and then these are what they look like. So look at the Hittite. Again, your time span, troop types. So like light chariots, bow, convert up to 9 stands to A class. Morale points, stands, and troop ratio. Infantry stands must outnumber mounted stands. Leaders depict as chariots. That's just one example. So we got tables after tables for each of these armies. Babylonian. So detailed tables, but not overwhelming at all. We're still talking about the basic troop types, right? Medium infantry for the Shang Chinese, medium infantry bow. Yeah. So many pages and pages of all of these tables. I think my impression is these tables aren't necessarily as so detailed as to be interesting reading by themselves. Like some miniatures rule sets I've seen, the detail in the army list, sometimes with background paragraphs, can just be interesting reading on their own. I wouldn't say that's the case here, but it's my impression that these tables are useful and utilitarian. So if you want to make a Central Asian nomad army, the table is going to help you do that. Clear, easy to read, easy to use. Yeah. So I think that's all there is to the rules, just all of these army lists. I think that goes right up to the end. So, might of arms. So I've looked over these rules really for the first time. That was my first complete scan of the rules, and what I see makes me want to consider using some type of basically stand-in or ersatz pieces, and actually experiment with these rule set, with this rule set, and see if it really does make it easy for someone to pick up, the traditional, straightforward mechanics of miniatures wargaming for these periods, for these historical periods. Yeah, I think I'll be looking for that. See if I can make, even if it's nothing more than, paper stands, which I'm certainly not above doing. Just basic, paper stands to exercise these rules. So that's Might of Arms, a complete army rules set with army lists to cover ancient, dark age, and medieval miniatures battles. And I think the one thing that really sets this rule set apart are all of the diagrams and tables and examples of play. So there it is, Might of Arms.